we know that new business starts tick up in recessions. That's true everywhere. Minnesota generally doesn't do as well as other states on new business starts. We rank near the bottom of the pile on that metric, though we are #1 in the nation in terms of successful businesses that are started. So we know that people that start businesses in this state are going to have a better chance of any other state in the country of making sure those businesses are around in 5 years and that they're thriving. But we need more people to start those businesses and take that risk to really begin the journey of entrepreneurship that can lead to creating new jobs and solving some of the biggest problems this pandemic has brought on. We've already seen about a 30% uptick in new business starts in the past 6 months, based again on that downturn and people's desire to start new businesses. So we're trending in a great direction. And last year, again, despite the pandemic, was a banner year for technology and innovation in Minnesota. We saw $1.86 billion in venture capital run through our state. We ranked 12th nationwide on VC, and we're second in the Midwest. We saw some of the highest patent rates that our state's ever seen in the last year. And really something that we're proud of at Deed is, thanks to the partnerships with organizations across this state, our Launch Minnesota program really took off. And this is a statewide effort to connect our entrepreneurial ecosystem and really put Minnesota on the map as an innovation capital in our country. And so that program, led by Neela, she'll tell you more about it in a moment, is something that we think can help galvanize the community with many of the leaders you'll see on this call today and far more to really put Minnesota in the eyes of venture capitalists and innovators and entrepreneurs and corporate leaders across the country as a place where you can start a company that can solve a problem that bears addressing in the wake of this pandemic. So, this legislative session, we're fighting for more dollars for the Angel Tax Credit and for the Launch Minnesota to help make innovation in this state possible. And it's all part of making sure we have an inclusive economic recovery that works for the whole state. So we're excited for this conversation today. I'm going to turn it over to Neela to kick off the discussion and introduce our panelists. We'll do it around the horn, and then eager to hear questions and ideas and thoughts about how Minnesota can do better to build an amazing innovation ecosystem moving forward. So Neela, over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to just take a couple minutes and highlight a few parts of Launch Minnesota to get everyone on the same page, and then we'll go around and do the introductions of our wonderful panelists. This model really represents the holistic approach of Launch Minnesota. Startups, innovators are at our core and the key focus, but all of these sectors are critical to building a strong and vibrant innovation ecosystem. Launch Minnesota is really serving as that front door, a central touch point that is bringing these sectors together to start, support, and scale new businesses and technologies. We are focused on 3 key areas: capital, culture, and talent. And I'm going to walk you through those now, just some of our progress to date in this last year and a half. First, we've awarded to date $2.8 million to 88 unique grantees. Proud to have some as panelists today. We have another announcement coming shortly, but we have fully allocated our second year funding before March. So clearly the demand is great by our startup community. And to point out, this is only about 30% of the total dollars requested. We are also very proud to share that our current grantees, 59% of them are from targeted businesses. You see there, it's BIPOC, women, Greater Minnesota founders, and veterans. Minnesota also had a record year in venture capital, deploying over $1.8 billion. Launch Minnesota continues to incentivize private investment through our grants and Angel Tax Credit, and of course, other efforts. As of this week, our program has $1.2 million remaining in the Angel Tax Credit and the general credits, and about $4.3 million reserved for reserve credits for our targeted populations. And I'm challenging everybody to use those tax credits for our targeted population. All right, second, we are creating a collaborative culture, and each of you here today play an enormous critical role in this ecosystem. We first started by creating a collaborative statewide network, a first of its kind hub and spoke model, bringing together 6 regions, 8 hubs, and over 80 program partners. Regions were encouraged to look outside of their organizations and their cities and leverage their strength. These networks have come together on a regular cadence, leveraging programming, marketing efforts, funding, and customizing their local offerings while still drawing on statewide best practices and organizations like MNSBIR, Medical Alley, and others. The SBA, the U.S. Small Business Administration, has identified that a connected and a coordinated ecosystem is beneficial to entrepreneurship and hosted a competition. Launch Minnesota applied on behalf of all of our partners. And as a result, Minnesota received the SBA Super Connector Award this January, along with three other national efforts. And last, we are working to develop talent and expertise. Through our partners, we've educated over 630 entrepreneurs. We're working with the University of Minnesota with our innovation grantees who are outside of the UN system to increase their access to expertise and one-on-one technical assistance. We are creating strong pipelines and on-ramps with our partners to really make sure entrepreneurs have the resources and the talent and the capital they need to be successful. And last is we've created a Minnesota Expert Exchange in partnership with the University of Minnesota to find those right connections at the right time. And in closing, just really proud of our traction and the traction of our startups, tractions of our entrepreneur support organizations over this last year and a half. 92% of grantees have said that the grants have helped move their technology and business forward. We've helped level the playing field, increasing access, opportunity, and funding to those underrepresented. And we've helped amplify the story, not only in regions, our state, but nationally. So it's an honor to serve in this capacity. And now the best part of today is hearing from all of you. So let's go around and do some round of introductions. Please just state your name and your business or organization. Kathy, let's start with you.
Sure, Kathy Toon. So my organizations are many. So I'm the CFO at Mirani Health, and Ann, the CEO, is here on the phone as well. I'm also the CFO at Agitated Solutions. I'm a partner at Capita 3, which is a seed venture fund here locally that invests in women-led businesses. And I also do a lot of investing on my own. So I have a portfolio of about 20 investments in the healthcare field, many of which are here local. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Lori.
Sure, thanks. My name's Lori Most. I'm the founder and CEO of Binary Bridge, and our product is Backpack EMR.
Thank you. Ann.
I'm Ann Holder. I am the CEO and founder of Mirani Health.
Reed.
Hi, I'm Reed Robinson. I'm a founder and partner in Groove Capital, which is where entrepreneurs in Minnesota come to get their first institutional investment. It's a combination of a traditional venture fund and an angel group, both connecting to accelerate early stage investments in Minnesota's best up and coming startups.
Thank you, Reed. And Sean, you also play a few roles.
Yeah, I've got a few hats. So I'm the volunteer coordinator for Austin Area Angels down in Austin, Minnesota. And then I am also the director of entrepreneurial services at READY, the Rochester Area Economic Development, Inc. And then I also work with the Southeast Minnesota Capital Fund in that capacity. And then I'm also a co-founder of a telehealth company called Telethera. So multiple hats for sure.
Thanks, Sean. And Pat.
Yes, hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pat Dillon, and I'm the director of MNSBIR, and we are the governor's representative for the federal small business innovation and small business technology transfer programs, which provide non-dilutive funding to startups and small businesses all across our whole Minnesota. And so I've been also the founder and director of the SBIR SCTR Accelerator, which is our hands-on support to companies that are pursuing federal funding, which is a very complex and competitive process. And we aim to make it easier for our Minnesota firms to navigate those programs. So I'm happy to be here, and I've got, some clients here on the call.
Yeah, and you definitely do help navigate those federal funding options. So thank you for your service. And Frank, I owe you. I'm taking up much of your calendar today. Frank was just a host this morning during our Friday forum call. And so Frank, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
It's always a good day when it's spent with you. I'm Frank Jastalki. I'm the VP of Intelligence with the Medical Alley Association, the trade group for healthcare and health technology companies in Minnesota.
Thank you, Frank. So I think we're gonna kick it off by hearing from some of our founders. Please tell us about your business and share your story. How did you launch this business? Lori, can we start with you?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, my background is all in software technology and software development. And so my story starts at Target and United Health Group, where I was, doing good things. I really loved what I was doing, but wanted to do a little bit more. So I went on a trip to Peru with my sister. She's an orthopedic surgical PA, and noticed that they were using paper for everything, and primarily because they didn't have access to electricity and they didn't have the internet. And so using some sort of digital solution was just not possible. So sometimes paper is the best solution, but in this case, they didn't have access to the past medical histories. They didn't really see the full picture of the patient. They were passing around papers. They couldn't do follow-ups. So it was really hampering their ability to give quality care. So I got a few people together and we built Backpack EMR, which is a fully offline EMR, electronic medical records, that can also share data while you're offline. So you can do pop-up clinics anywhere. We've done one on the beach in Haiti. We did some in little churches. We've done them sort of all over the place. So that's the company. So yeah, and that's the story of how we started.
Wonderful. It's been great to see your progress through the years. Anne or Kathy, who wants to start? Anne, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I can take it. Yeah, so I'll just give you a quick background on Mirani Health. So my background is in, it's a little engineering and operations. I got into medical devices and spent many years at Medtronic, and during that time spent a lot of time at the Mayo Clinic and built some pretty deep relationships there. And there was at one point where Dr. Paul Friedman, who is the chair of cardiology, came to me and just said, hey, I've got this idea and I'd really like to take some of the technology that we've developed in cardiology and let's apply it to fetal monitoring. And would you be interested in helping us develop the technology and trying to commercialize it? And so I didn't know a lot about fetal monitoring. I had to do a ton of market research and really understand the need. And I was blown away at the lack of technology and what is really happening in fetal and maternal morbidity and mortality. It's really a crime what's happening right now in this country, and we're one of the worst in the world. And so I jumped at the opportunity to try and develop some technology that could actually improve outcomes and give doctors a lot better information. So that's kind of how we started. I started as an EIR down at Mayo and helped to develop some technology so that we could capture data, new technology that's never been done before. And quite honestly, then embarked on building this business, starting the company, and really tried to figure out, okay, how do I fund this company? With my background, I can build a business and, within a business, I've never done any funding on my own. And that's where Kathy really jumped in to help me. And I just have to say thank you for all the support that I've gotten from everybody on this call.
Thank you. It's always so interesting to hear everyone's journey. Kathy, do you want to share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. And I'll give a little bit of background too on Agitated, because Anne gave the Mirani story. So, and I work with Agitated also and helped get the board moving along and some of the investment going on along there as well. And Agitate is run this by a newer entrepreneur in the area, Morgan Clyburn, amazing engineer, business person, and just like several other stories, her concept came from a clinician running into problems and seeing big needs. And so she got together with the clinician and formed this company and has advanced it dramatically. But the concept there is delivering gases into the body and taking away gases you don't want. So delivering oxygen and nitrogen and taking out carbon monoxide. And they've developed some amazing technologies to facilitate that and make that feasible and work in terms of imaging and therapeutic purposes. So they're off and running, doing great things. They've got a great technical team, and they're also tapping into many of the resources around that are represented here, and including Pat has been really helpful. Their team has been applying for a lot of grants as well, and that process is very complicated.
Oh.
Thank you, Kathy. Sean, can you share a little bit about your startup and your story?
Yeah. So, I've got a bit of a serial entrepreneurial background. I was a writer and producer in Hollywood for about a decade before relocating here to Minnesota, and then writing and publishing comic books professionally, which then organically led to technology and augmented reality, actually. But for Telethera, which is the startup I'm focusing on currently, a buddy of mine from high school actually reconnected with me last January before the pandemic really hit, and he's like, I see this need in therapy settings. He's the CEO of a family clinic in New York, and I'm trying to come up with a solution. So we hammered away at the idea and came up with a solution to tap into unused appointments for therapists, no shows and canceled appointments at the last minute, and then also serve the need in both rural America and in metropolitan America where, there's not enough, clinicians to go around. So came up with the solution for that, and, partnered with some developers and have an MVP currently. So that's where that's at.
Thanks for sharing. The next question I have really for anyone, because you all serve entrepreneurs, but maybe more specifically for our founders. During your journey, what have you found most helpful to start and scale? And you don't have to say the state of Minnesota, okay? You just but I mean, please just share your insight on some of those, the organizations or the resources or the funding that really just helped move you forward.
I can start. For me, it was really, I'd never fundraised before. And I do have some sales in my background, so I'm comfortable talking to people and kind of telling the story and that the value of what we're doing. But I had never raised money, and I really didn't have any network at all for doing that. And just through networking, I was lucky enough to meet Kathy. And Kathy really introduced me to a lot of people. But getting that first seed round was really, really difficult. And it was hard. I can't tell you how many times that I pitched before we actually started getting some traction. And, you get your first, I got, $500,000 just from very close friends and family. But then getting to that next level was really difficult, and to close that first seed round. So just, some of the things that we took advantage of, and I was so new to this, and, I had Kathy who was really saying, okay, these are the things we need to look at. And she was the one that introduced me to the programs of Launch Minnesota also. So from a funding perspective, we took advantage of the grants and the loan and the angel tax credit. But let me tell you, I mean, the angel tax credit was just incredibly valuable for us for our last two rounds. And the reason being is that you find investors that are really interested. And it's that thing that actually gets them over the finish line to actually invest in your company. And we actually had a few investors that said, you know, we were going to give you X amount of money. And then when it came down to it and they understood the tax credit, they would give us 4X, they would give us 5X. And it was just very powerful and incredibly helpful in actually closing our rounds and closing them faster.
That is great. That's what we want to hear. Kathy, were you about to say something?
Yeah, let me add a little bit to that, because as a partner with Capita 3 as well, you know, we focus on female-led businesses, and oftentimes the female-led businesses are first-time CEOs and first-time founders, and that's true of anybody that is sort of a non-traditional founder and CEO is typically going to be a first-timer, right? And that is probably where the biggest challenge lies, I think, right now, is when you're first time, all the things Ann said are true, but you also have a network that is limited because you haven't done it before. And so I think Minnesota is very open, and people are very open to meeting and talking. And, you know, I've talked a lot with Reed and, you know, what they're doing. And I think that having that openness, and, you know, Frank's a huge connector. He's probably one of the best connectors around anywhere. Having that ability to make those connections is incredibly important, because as a new person to the field or to the fundraising environment, that network effect can't be underestimated and understated, the value of that to get things going.
So I'd like to add a comment to this, because the angel tax credit is very important even to companies that are coming through the SBIR and FCTR pipeline. And based on, you know, the time that the program started in 2016 and until 2019, there's been $20 million that was supported through the SBIR and FCTR programs to the companies that also received angel tax credits. So there's a very, very synergistic role that SBIR and FCTR plays with the angel tax credit program, either before or after the award. And so it's really important that you know, people look at the entire landscape of funding, federal and of course investments that exist, and how it all plays together. Because at the federal level, the agencies are very much interested in companies that can attract additional investments through angels or even through venture capitalists. Yeah. And so this is, to me, it all ties together very nicely.
No, the federal funding is key, Pat, and can leverage that with the angel tax credits. It's been great, so thank you. Lori, anything with your journey, what you found most helpful?
Yeah, definitely. So I would kind of piggyback on everything that's already been said with the Launch MN Innovation Grant. Definitely use that. Along with the angel tax credit, those have also been huge. But what I think is really important is the entry point, which for me, my background was all in software. I know product people all over the place, but I know nobody in business or fundraising or investors or startups. And so my entry point was the Twin Cities Startup Week, which was very approachable. And that's how I learned that the state of Minnesota could do anything for me. I would never have looked at, you know, Minnesota as an option, you know, that just wouldn't even have come to mind. But that's where I met Mindeed. I think that's where I was introduced to Medical Alley. I definitely learned about the Impact Hub there, which I became a member there. I had no idea about any of those resources, but the Twin Cities Startup Week is where you see all of that, whether people are hosting it or hosting sessions. It's the way that's really approachable to get in. So anyway, I thought that was one of the big things for getting me involved in the startup ecosystem here, getting me involved.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and we acknowledge that, and how we structured Launch Minnesota is, you know, obviously needing to have the capital, right, to fill that full spectrum of needs, but that connectivity, that network, that every founder and each of you have mentioned is one of our, you know, second key focus areas, because we know that's so critical in addition to that education and talent component. So we're focusing in on that, and know we hear you, the importance of that. Let's let's go to this question, and really anyone can add to this. What would you say to other entrepreneurs, both here and in other places across the U.S., for starting a business in Minnesota? I know Reed, I know Frank too. You talk to businesses all across the nation. What do you think is our value proposition here in Minnesota as we launch and grow businesses?
Well, I think you heard
the top business survival rate in the nation.
I think you heard Lori and some of the other entrepreneurs sprinkle in bits and pieces of why that is. There is an incredible community of support networks and organizations that can help entrepreneurs in the earliest stage. That's one. And they're interconnected thanks to programs like Launch Minnesota and Twin Cities Startup Week and everybody else that fits into that kind of entrepreneurial support organization bucket. And so, you know, in the last 10 years, the number of organizations that have focused on industry-specific founders and the projects that they're working on is dramatically different. It's an incredibly rich, interconnected tapestry that is very, very compelling. The capital piece is a different question, candidly. There's still work that needs to be done there. But the good news is if you're going to start a business in basically probably 12 to 15 different industries, you have an incredible resource network available to you in this state. That it's not just education or mentorship, but also access to potential customers, enterprise pilots and opportunities, acquisition targets. And so my belief is, as an investor now in the subject, is if you fit into one of those buckets and you've got all these resources around you, your likelihood of success is that much higher. And then the value of me investing in you versus investing in another place is going to be dramatically better here because we're isolated from a lot of candidly inflated activities that are happening in other markets that we just don't see here.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of building on that, and Frank, I'm sure you want to answer that question too, but kind of as a pile-on to it, I'm curious not only what the advantages of the ecosystem are here, but as we think about sharing the message of Minnesota to the world as a place to come and build your company, what's differentiating about Minnesota? You know, I think, Frank, obviously you have a very clean line into sort of the med tech sector, and that's clearly a differentiator. And many of our entrepreneurs here today are working in med tech. But if you're to advise us on how to talk about the ecosystem from the perspective of the state when we're out there competing for business and talking to other leaders, what differentiates Minnesota, and what kind of differentiation do we even need, I guess, in that kind of a pitch? I'm curious how you think about our uniqueness, if you will.
Yeah, it's something we talk with a lot of companies about every year. We're fortunate as a state that there are many medtech, health IT, and even occasionally biopharma companies from around the world that choose to make Minnesota their home. When we talk to them, the thing they often say is that we have a community here that is about building business, not about building hype. One of our shared board members, Jody Hubler, is a fan of saying that Minnesota builds rabbits, real actual businesses building interesting things. The companies here, especially in healthcare, take it serious that we're building products that have the benefit of improving human life, but also the seriousness of the risk if that's done wrong. And they know that if they build a company in Medical Alley in Minnesota, that it will be high quality, it will be effective, and it'll be a real actual business that makes an impact around the world. For entrepreneurs that matters to, there's probably no better place on earth to be than right here.
Yeah, and Frank, you know, I will speak as an investor on that front too, because that is absolutely true. I mean, when you look across the country and you see the frothiness that Reed and as he alluded to, and some of these businesses that don't really make the effort to create something that is proven to work and have longevity it's frustrating and challenging to watch. And here I would say it's a little, there's more, what I would kind of put it as, there's a little more gray hair in the room, right, in some of these businesses, which is a very positive thing. Because you know what you're facing, you know the problems that exist, rather than you have to have been in it a long time to know some of the things that are going to be challenge you. I do want to comment on a little bit of Reed's perspective on the ecosystem. I think maybe Reed, this is what you might have been alluding to. There's the next level of growth, I think, is where we might have a bit of a gap. That's B round, C round growth stage of the company is where we have a lot of smaller funds now, which is amazing, more than I'd ever imagined seeing here. But that handoff of the next round of capital, the B round, the C round, the growth, is lacking. And I think that is where we have a huge opportunity to fill that void. The money's coming from outside, so that's great. We all love that, but I think we have room for far more activity and presence of large pools of capital here as well.
One other thing that I would like to add, just, if you're talking to new entrepreneurs about coming to Minnesota, the one thing that I did find was just a wealth of incubators and organizations that want to bring you in and really help in small group formats. The sharing that goes on is unbelievable, and there's quite a few of them in the state. I was a part of Bunker Labs, where I actually met Pat Dillon, who has been, I wouldn't have met Pat if I wasn't part of that EIR. And they're like, wow, she's a veteran. You need to know Pat. And Pat has been hugely helpful to Kathy and I, and we've been successful with federal grants. But there's just a huge number, like Lunar Startups, Techstars. There's so many of these programs that are here that are available to really help entrepreneurs get connected.
You're correct. We have over 24 incubators and accelerators across the state. And it's been a joy bringing them together every month now, sharing best practices and learning about the gaps and the strengths and how we can better serve them. From all of you, I'd love to hear your voices on all of this. What can the state do better? What do you want others to know? What gaps do we still need to fill? I hear you, Kathy, and we understand that gap in further stage funding. We have a few gaps, unfortunately, but we're going to keep persevering and trying to address those. But please just share where you see opportunity and where we should be really, hitting the gas pedal and focusing in on.
I can elaborate on the point, Kathy. I think you're absolutely right on the later stage. Capital is pipelining, so you have to know what you need at different stages. And I agree with your point. In the seed stage, we've actually done a pretty amazing job in the last 5 years of bringing a lot of capital at a very specific point in time. What happens before and what happens after is a big issue. Groove Capital exists to fill that pre-seed stage. And really accelerate that, like I mentioned earlier, that first institutional investment, which is so hard to find, to Ann's earlier comment. So filling a capital gap, from my vantage point, it is, after doing all of this other kind of ecosystem work, the one problem that has just been so nagging of this community that we couldn't not try to fix it. It was the one thing that was never going away. So I'm super motivated to fill that specific issue. In the process, I've discovered another really, really key point, and that I would love a broader awareness and attention to, and that is how do we engage high net worth individuals to actively participate in this activity in the form of angel investing. And I actually came upon this working with Neil and others in the state in investigating the angel tax credit. And what I found was the number of people that would qualify for that program, something like 40 to 50,000 people in the state, maybe more. Now the number of people that actually use it year in and year out was 52. So the delta between those two numbers is an incredible opportunity for this state, but it's also a cultural issue, awareness issue, and very complicated long-term things that I think everybody needs to be paying more attention to. And when we do that, we'll really see that inflection point occur that we've all been waiting for many years. So that's another thing that we really want to take leadership in.
Yeah, and I'll speak just a little bit to the angel tax credit. I've been an investor in it. I've helped people through it. I've helped Mirani and Agitated work in it. Having it, I've probably taught 50 people how to apply for the angel tax credit. It's not that complex, but it's a process and it's new to people. So what I'd say is having it be permanent. I know this is probably a comment, for Steve mostly, but having it be permanent would be amazing. And having it be, when it's in and it's out and it's funded and it's not, people then it falls off their radar screen, or the timing is wrong, or what have you. It's so to have it be permanent and people know it, I think it would be a tremendous advantage. And then people don't forget about it and have to be refreshed that it actually exists again in a certain period of time. And I think, Reed, to your point, I think that would actually help a lot with the use of it as well.
Amen. I'll just add one more clarifying point, Kathy, on top of that. And I believe the activity that we're seeing within that tax credit program might not necessarily be the activity that we want to incentivize. And I'm starting to have these conversations now, but if you're going to get into angel investing, I want you to go in with a strategy that you can win. And if you're brought into that program, you've got 50 to 100,000 that you're going to invest, and you put that in one, your likelihood of hitting on that is very low. And so if majority of the people that we're welcoming into programs like that or into angel investing, they haven't been provided with the context of how to be successful in early stage investing, we're setting up people to lose and then ultimately not repeat their activities. So education around how to angel invest, how to build portfolios, winning how to engage is super critical for a sustainable approach to the solution. And that may have been a missing piece that we've had so far.
This is really helpful just to hear how. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to, kind of reiterate or add on to what Reed was saying. The cultural side is not something to be underestimated. Our angel investors tend to be a lot more conservative, I think, than angels on the coast necessarily or elsewhere in the country. They want a little bit more sure of a bet, which, to the point Kathy was making earlier, our startups are more solid than, just hype. So that helps. The other thing, because we started Austin Area Angels right before the pandemic hit, our informational session was the night before everything shut down, so that worked out well. But bandwidth was another thing that we've been facing this past year. Nobody has the bandwidth to look at the deal flow and that kind of thing. But to kind of remedy that, one thing we're focusing on is the community building side of it. And, getting those angel investors who are coming from all over, different sectors and everything, and just kind of getting them excited about the ecosystem. Like we're getting the entrepreneurs excited about the ecosystem, building on that energy, I think will help engage more investors actively in the environment. So.
That's really helpful. I wonder, because you're talking about some of the gaps here, whether it be the permanence of the angel tax credit, the bandwidth issues. Broadband is going to be a major issue in the coming years. We think we can get this thing done in a matter of years versus decades, given some of the federal money that's going to be coming in as well. On the funding spectrum, I've heard a couple of things here. Kathy, you mentioned kind of the BC round as being a gap. Reed, you mentioned kind of pre-seed. Is there a consensus that that's kind of the two gaps in our spectrum, that we've got sort of an angel network there, you've got sort of Series A capital, but it's that follow-on B and C and the pre-seed areas that Minnesota needs to work hardest on? Or it's always helpful for us to know what gaps are there so we can try to figure out what incentives will be available. One of the things that's going to be coming down the pike in the next few months is a reimagination of the SSBCI program, the State Small Business Incentive Program, which was launched back in, I want to say 2009 or 10 during the last recession, that brought in a lot of money for uses such as loans to small businesses, but also venture capitalists and venture capital, and how you incentivize more venture money to come into your market. And so as we're trying to figure out how should we construct a program that incentivizes the right venture and the right windows, where the gaps are is helpful for us to understand from entrepreneurs and leaders. So I'd be curious if there's consensus that those are the gaps, or if there's others we should be thinking about.
So I'll step in here. So what I see with companies coming through the SBIR and FCTR pipeline is they may get, the phase 1 funding and the phase 2 funding, and they develop the technology to the point where maybe they really kind of got something, but they're still too early for the investors to step in. And I've got a number of clients that are in that arena. They've been successful in getting this really incredibly important funding, and very competitive to get that funding. But now they don't have enough clinical data to really get them over the finish line, so that the investors will come in at that point. So that's a really critical step. It's after that phase 2 funding, and before that next tranche of funding coming from the investors. That's a real gap for our firms that are coming down through this pipeline. And then it's also the pre-seed. What I see as a gap is like we have a lot of startups, we have a lot of small businesses that aren't looking at the SBIR and SCTR program that should be looking at it. And the bandwidth for me is very limited. So that's why we started the accelerator, to do the cohorts, to do that vetting, to make sure that the companies that are coming through the pipeline are really good candidates, and that they're ready to step into this highly competitive process. And so that's, what I see from my perspective, and of course working with, investors to some degree. I mean, it's all part of that continuum for this company, and move down from the idea stage all the way towards commercialization. The other gap that I see, and we don't really talk about it all that much, but it's all the technologies that are available for licensing at the federal level, and even from Mayo Clinic and from the University of Minnesota. There's a lot of technologies that are available for licensing that may have a market opportunity. It may not be a venture deal, but at least it's a market opportunity for maybe even an existing small business to take that technology and to help commercialize it, and use SBIR and SCTR funding to help move it along. So to me, there's like this, I mean, the federal government spends $150 billion a year on R&D, and it's from basic research all the way through applied research. And we need to do a better job of accessing those dollars. And the U of M does a great job, Mayo Clinic does a great job, but when it comes to the private sector, the companies that, especially the small businesses, let's say 500 employees or less, they're not looking at the programs as they should. And being a one-person, operation basically with a team of consultants, we're not able to help all those companies. So that's why we started the accelerator, to make sure that they were ready and that they could step into that arena. That's a long-winded answer.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Pat, and thanks for sharing those pain points. Anyone else on the funding gaps that you're seeing?
I might just add, so we track investment data in healthcare going back to 2008 when the SEC made it easier to report, as well as getting direct info from the companies in the community. And I'd echo the sentiments. What the data tends to show is, particularly for device, because it tends to be a bit different in biopharma or digital health, that the earliest stage of money is one of the biggest challenges. If you're an already serial successful entrepreneur, accessing it is not easy, but manageable. If you're a first-time entrepreneur or from an underestimated community, you may not have that friends and family network that can provide that funding, and there's not a lot of places to go. Assuming you do make it through that, we see then this big kind of donut hole in that B and C round where if you strip out the handful of very large, wonderfully successful ventures of the last few years, your Bright Health, your Bind Benefits, you see a big missing part of the equation. And if what we're interested in is creating jobs, wealth, economic vitality, we need those companies to make it to that stage and to have a higher hit rate, which probably gets at culture change for our investors, as well as having the state's support to build that long-term vision and kind of carry us along a bit.
Well, and I would say that, you know, the most large venture funds will invest nationally or internationally. And so having, you know, a fund based here doesn't mean that they're going to spend all their dollars here, but it does have the higher likelihood that they will invest locally. So I think that's what we really are missing. We don't have large funds here. I was with Thomas McNerney. We were one of the larger funds in the area for a long time. We did not raise a fund 3. So that fund is now done investing. So, and that we haven't really had a replacement of that. And that's just in the healthcare sector. We need every sector represented, but those funds that have a presence locally, regionally, will do deals locally, regionally, and around the world. But you will find that I think the data would show, and Frank, you probably would have the real data to say this, but they will do investments locally. So I think we need more, right? More investors and investment funds that are bigger, that are based here.
Yeah.
Sorry, Reed, go ahead.
I was just going to say the answer to your question, Steve, is all of the above. Even at the seed stage. But Kathy's point is actually super illustrative of these are problems that vary by industry too. And there are some imbalances between the talent and the incredible opportunities for investment, like in food, in CPG, and device, where the difference between the quality and quantity of starts and the investment at those stages is really, really bad in certain sectors. And so it changes depending on which vertical you're looking at of how bad the problem is. But the key point is it's still a big problem. If I had to guess of this pre-seed stage that we're really focusing on for the investments we make in Minnesota, Groove Capital is a $5 million fund. I think the problem that we're trying to solve is a $20 million problem. And from the limited exposure I've had so far.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on that, with those pre-seed dollars, options like the innovative grant that's offered through DEED, that was actually huge for us, just as a carrot to get the initial investors of saying, hey, well, there's this grant, that we can apply for once we have the MVP or whatever. And so it got us that initial funding. So more programs like that. The Emerging Entrepreneur Loan Program, again, I don't think there's enough awareness or manpower bandwidth necessarily behind that. We're actually at Ready, we're looking to apply for it for this next cycle, specifically to help out on that front. But more of those pre-seed opportunities, I think, is what I'm seeing as a need for sure.
I would just piggyback on that as a founder who went through that from a pre-seed perspective. I do not have a network of high wealth individuals to access. I have no idea who angel invests, like literally zero of the people that I know were angel investors. So I went heavily into debt, maxed out every credit card, borrowed money from my parents. I don't have a network at all. I still don't have a massive network. I have a lot more of one, but that's because I've scrimped along for the past 5 years doing this. I still have yet to get paid. So I guess what I would say is what the state of Minnesota could do for us is if you have this list of angels that are participating in the angel tax credit, or that you know are these high wealth individuals, if you could be highlighting like individual startups that have already been through the Launch MN program, or who have already been vetted through other areas, that would be helpful to the founders like me. I don't know, I guess some things that would highlight us to those groups. I've heard that there's a bandwidth problem for not being able to evaluate deals, but maybe that's a way that you can get those of us that are deals in front of the people who are wanting to invest, because it's hard for us to do that ourselves because we don't know who we're even promoting ourselves to. So I guess that would be my feedback for if you're looking for ways to help us out, that would be amazing.
You are our focus, Lori. We want to see you successful, and we've taken some first steps with that. So any of our businesses that are already certified with the Angel Tax Credit Program is on the Launch Minnesota website under Capital and Angel Tax Credit. And I refer, angels and venture capitalist firms to that page all the time. Hey, these businesses are already accredited and been certified. We also list you on our website under innovation grants. So they see all of our innovation grants. You can cut and slice based on industry and sector and whatever they want. I also provide that kind of details as requested by investors and always point them to that page. So beginning steps, there's a lot more to be done, and we're going to be working with partners like Frank and Pat and others on this call to make sure that with industry sectors too, they know who our innovation grants are and our angel tax credit businesses are. So, and I just want to thank Reed for and Sean too, both really being active in that education of our angel funds or potential angel investors. We know we have to double down on that, and education is going to be the way to increase that number. And so we're going to look to your expertise and bring that out to every corner of the state to let them know about the ripple effect of this type of investment, not only for launching new businesses, developing new technologies, but growing communities. So thank you for your work on that.
So I have kind of a different thought about what could be done, and this is based on having been in this environment for many years, is that there always seems like there's a disconnect between what's happening at the congressional level and what's happening with the Minnesota legislature. And if we could get those two bodies in alignment to support innovators and entrepreneurs, I think that would go a long way towards leveraging all the resources and capabilities that exist at the federal level and at the state level to support our entrepreneurs. But it always seemed like there was, great support on the congressional side, but then there was less support on the state side. And especially when you get outside of the metro area, there's like this competition between greater Minnesota and the metro area, and especially with legislators, and this is my opinion, and what's happening within the metro area, and I think the Launch Minnesota network is going to be really important to be able to communicate that story to those legislators outside of the metro area, to really communicate that innovation and entrepreneurship is really important to the health and well-being of the state overall. But there still seems like there's a disconnect, and I know that's a big problem to solve, but I think it's something that's very real. But maybe I'm have my myopic view of the world, but it's something that I think needs to be addressed.
Yeah, well, we think that, in fact, this is a unique time to show that entrepreneurship can happen anywhere in Minnesota. And we know it's true. Everyone on this call knows it's true, but it's easier in the Twin Cities than elsewhere. you have access to more resources, you're closer to people who might be able to help you. Investors might look to the Twin Cities more often. So we have really leaned forward into cities and markets outside of the Twin Cities as areas to invest in. And I think really coupled broadband as part of the strategy in all of this, because if you don't have the connection to the internet, you're not able to do much from a business development standpoint. So all these things are really linked together. And I think we have an opportunity to be a state that really leads the nation as the kind of place where you can start a company from anywhere and succeed. And we already see great examples of that across Minnesota, but we want to create more. And these trend lines of folks moving to greater Minnesota from the Twin Cities for more space, sort of in the wake of this pandemic, and you've seen, houses get snapped up in areas outside of the Twin Cities pretty quickly. All those things point to, I think, folks making some lifestyle choices that don't have to therefore, hold them back from the ability to start something great. And so I think policies like broadband and Launch Minnesota will help. And things like the Telecommuter Forward Act, which allows us to label a town as a great place to start something or work remotely because it's got good internet access. Some of these marketing efforts can kind of help us too with that message. But I'm glad you mentioned it. And yeah, of course, our politics in the state never match up perfectly with the federal government. But I'll tell you, a $1.9 trillion package coming from Congress out into the country with these American Rescue Plan dollars, full of programs and flexible funding that we can use to grow our economy, is just a once in a lifetime opportunity. It really is, and we're looking at it in that way. And we're going to need entrepreneurs and leaders like you to help us direct that funding in the best way possible, and to make this innovation ecosystem a huge part of growing jobs in our state. And again, it's not just for folks starting companies, but all the data shows you if you're a business in what you might call the innovation economy, in other words, you're using a new technology to do something different than it had been done before, the kind of job multipliers for those industries are higher than any other industry. In other words, a lot of other jobs get created kind of around those companies because they exist. So this isn't just about having a cool tech sector, if you will. This is really about the future of the state and our ability to grow jobs. So I know we're almost at time. Neil, I'll turn it to you for some final words, but do want to thank our whole panelists for joining us today as we look at the next Minnesota economy and how we can all work together to make it great for everyone. Neil?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. And I'm not sure if there's any questions from our press. I will, or media, I'll let Jen step in.
As we're wrapping up here, Alex Kerrigan, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask those now. You can keep going, Neela, though, and
okay,
we'll just see if there's any questions that pop up.
Sounds good. Well, I just really appreciate each of you for being part of today, for your candor, for your expertise and your insight. Our success is your success. We need to know what your needs are so we can try to incentivize that and fill these gaps. And I really feel strongly just what we've been able to see done through our partnerships in this first year and a half. We have a great future in front of us for Minnesota, and I just have much gratitude for the work that you do. Our entrepreneurs, you really care about the problems you're solving. It's clear the passion that you have. And for the entrepreneurial support orgs and those serving our entrepreneurs, I mean, the passion and the dedication to see their success through is just inspiring. So it's an honor every day to work with each of you. And please don't ever hesitate to reach out to Launch Minnesota, the state of Minnesota. We're here to serve you. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Bye-bye.